Hi everyone, this is second course of TCOM351, and today we are going to talk a lot about how actually we are going to be able to create an HTML document. So let's get started. Okay, so last we learned, why don't we go back to some of the things we learned last week. So I hope you remember this. Do you remember this? Okay, I'm gonna go to the set up the show and then window. Okay, good. So I hope you remember this part. Last week, we majorly went over a structure of blank HTML document. So one of the things that we learned is like things like this, exclamation mark. I forgot about it, but this should be that capital letter. But exclamation mark, doc type space HTML, and after that, you have this big container called HTML opening and closing HTML tag. So it's like, you have this declaration and you have this big chunk of HTML container. So this HTML container is defined by beginning and ending. And then inside, you remember there is an opening head and closing head, and then body and body. So there is a head section declared and defined by head tag. So I would call it as a head sections. And there is a majorly big body section. So this body section is our canvas, and even though there is no space in between here, our entirely throughout this class, what we are going to do is put a lot of code in between this opening and closing body tag, and this is something that we call as our canvas. So we are mainly putting a lot of stuff in the body section. So do you remember this part? All right, so I'm gonna close this one, and then let's go to today's lecture of, where did it go? No, this is not it. Okay, here it is. Okay, so let's get started. So now, before we get started, there are several things that I want to talk about. This is a basic rule when you do coding with HTML. And one of the common mistake is called the no naked tag mistake. What do you mean by naked tag? This is majorly I'm talking about, sorry for this error message. So literally say nothing should be naked, which means all your content need to be in a structure with a pair of tags. So in your it's like a pair of tag means it's opening and then closing tag. So whenever you want to say something like, for example, you want to say hello, right? So this is your content. This is your content, but it cannot be just in your HTML document, because the problem of this one is it is naked. What do you mean by that? This is not by inside of anything. So you have to be embedded by something called the tags. So in other words, our content itself cannot be in our HTML document without being embedded by this thing called the tags. So it can be many things, and we are going to learn a lot of things like what kind of a tag and what it does. That's mainly what we are going to do today. So in this PowerPoint slide, I want you to remember this. I just make it very easy to call, hey, no naked tags. Whenever throughout this semester and throughout your projects, I will probably pinpoint a lot of your HTML documents and say, hey, this is naked tag, which means, yeah, you throw some content in there, but without telling HTML or a browser that what this is about. So in other words, these two texts are giving us or giving a browser a sort of like instruction how to render. Do you remember what I mean by render? Render is, if you remember correctly, when your browser gets all this HTML code from the server, it try to read and try to display the way the human being can recognize that the whole process is called render. So this opening and closing tag will be a instruction on how to display this hello. And you may wonder, what do you mean by like how to display? Hello is a hello, of course, but do you remember that this hello can be in different color? It can be a underline, it can be italic, even you can say what specific font. So just try to remember that in entire HTML document, particularly we are looking for what? Because we are doing a lot of like body and body. So don't be confused. We are going to put a lot of in between body and body tag. And you may wonder like, yeah, this opening is a body and then closing is a closing like slash body. So we already have a closing. No, this doesn't count. Whatever you want to put it here, you also have the starting and ending a opening and closing tag here. So this whole thing should be in here. That is what I mean by naked text. Okay. All right, let's move on. Next PowerPoint slide. Now, this one, I want to share with you that HTML is not like any of your document program or Microsoft Word document. So one of the biggest characteristic of it is a vertical and horizontal space in HTML code doesn't provide any vertical space or even horizontal space. So there are 4 examples in my PowerPoint here. So this one, first one, now we know this hello. Oh gosh, I put the H-A-L-L-O, hello as a W there. But anyway, this hello is not naked. Why is that? There is a opening and closing. You may wonder what is H1. I will share with you very soon. But H1 is, H stands for heading. So H1 means heading 1. So H1 tag, like I said, this opening and closing tag will give a browser a instruction how to render this hello. We don't know what heading 1 style is yet, but heading 1 is a preset style. When people come up with this idea of HTML, they come up with this idea of preset. So H1 is one of them, and I will explain why. So anyway, this whole thing says, hey, render this content in between my opening and closing and adjust this heading 1 style because it's H1 and say hello. And then you can see there is a huge space in it, right? So you may wonder if this is document over here, you may expect like this much of a space here and then say hello, right? Or in this example number 2, there is no space in between. And number 3 example, you can see this much of a vertical space or this much of a small vertical space. So what I am telling you about the characteristics of HTML is that this whole a space in vertically like this here or horizontal space here doesn't count. In other words, it doesn't produce any space at all. I know what you are thinking. You may wonder, like, what if I need a space? Yeah, I will get there. But I want you to remember this. This is a sort of a coding for computer, and computer doesn't do by its own. Even it doesn't read our mind. As you can see so far, you learned that this is opening tag and closing tag, and that my content of hello will be rendered or displayed by the preset style of H1, which means browser only follow the instruction. And this space is not part of the instruction, that is why. So I will, why don't we do it our first HTML and then we'll do all together. So why don't we leave over here for a second. Okay. And I want you to open your browser here. So let's say Google. Okay. So you can follow me together if you have a computer with you right now. What I want you to do is Google it and say a free text editor. In my case, I'm using a Mac, so I'm gonna do it on a Mac. But if you don't have a Mac, you can do just say Pretext editor, and then it'll come up with this whole bunch of different possibility. So I'm gonna go to the first one, 10 best free text editor for Mac. And I haven't used all this. As you can see, this is like a whole lot of possibility. But I would say bracket is the easiest. From my perspective, it is easy to use, and then it's not that much complicated. So I am going to go to the bracket. Okay. And bracket is here. How to download this one? Free download. And I want you to remember this. If you don't know how to go to download, just remember this, brackets.io. That is their URL. And I am going to download this. So it's downloading it. And then I'm gonna open it up. Skip this one. Now, this is my bracket. I'm gonna just put into my application folder. Replace. So obviously I already have one in my account, in my application folder, but I'm redoing it just for your understanding. So we're done with this guy. You're still waiting for my brackets is being copied to my application folder. Okay, let's wait a little bit. And then I'm gonna open up another Finder. So go to Finder, new Finder window. Okay. Seems like it's done. So I'm gonna close this out, go to the application, and you can find it a bracket starting with a B here. So open it up. That's okay. Open. Okay, this is bracket. All right. If you have never used it, don't worry about it. It's not that much complicated at all. But I would say, all right, here. So let's see how we use it. When you first use it, let me talk about bracket first. So bracket, this is a text editor, which means you can create any text with this application. And bracket is widely being used for coding as well. So in our case, we are going to use it as HTML editor. Yes, we can do that because as I show you in the first day, in the long run, HTML is also a text document. Do you remember what I showed you about Google? And then, there's no picture. It's a purely edit text document. Now, you may wonder, hey, Dr. Lee, I thought we are going to learn Dreamweaver. Yes, Dreamweaver is also a text editor too, but this guy is way more specialized. And of course, we are going to jump into it from next week. But before we do everything with the Dreamweaver, we are going to use text editor. By this way, you will know the true nature of this HTML coding experience, which means you don't really need a Dreamweaver for this, because sometimes, as a Ball State student, you have a free access to the Dreamweaver. But what if you graduate and then later on when you work for a company or as an individual, what if you can't afford this Dreamweaver? Yeah, then just use the editor. You don't really need a Dreamweaver. So anyway, today we are going to use a bracket today, but then from next week on, we are going to use a Dreamweaver happily. Here, there is a getting started part, and I would say totally ignore. I mean, this is so much of like a confusion. So what you can do is, as you can see, there is a small little upside down arrow. You click on it. It just say, hey, where is your opening folder? Which means there is bracket already created some sort of their own default folder and then put everything in there. We don't want to do this. So what we can do is go under the file. Before you get, this is our interest. It says a working file. So whatever you are working on is your working file here. So that's very important to notice. Okay, so go to the file and new. As you can see here, there are we just create a new file. So working file, there are two, 1 and 2. As you can see, this black highlight over here, it means this is this one. Okay, so what if I click on this first one? As you can see, there is some content that I'm working on JavaScript kind of code. So this is JavaScript. As you can see, I'm not going to do a Java here. I'm just pinpointing that. You can even double click on this and then switch between this file. Obviously, we don't need this file. So whenever you highlight this guy, do you see this X mark in the left side of your file name? And we can just click on it and then it's gone. So this is starting. I want you to put everything in here, and untitled-1, that's our file. Okay, so let's right now untitled-1 is just blank, pure blank text file, and we are going to make it as HTML. How are you gonna do it? This is what all the thing we learned last week is very useful. Do you remember what is special about HTML? Yes, this the HTML structure that actually makes this HTML text document is different and unique with all other text documents, and that because of this structure, excuse me, because of the structure, your browser is able to read and recognize it as HTML. So how do you do it with this structure? I'm gonna make it bigger for you. So we remember this, starting with exclamation mark, right? And capital letter, doc type, space, right? And then HTML. Do you remember this part? So this is declaration. And inside I have hit return key. And one nice thing about this bracket is it always comes with this line number. Don't worry, this line number is only for your reference, but it's never gonna be part of this document. So let's go to the line 2 because I hit the return key. And I will say, what was the next one? What did I say about the biggest container of your HTML document? Yes, it is a HTML tag, right? Do you remember that part? So the next line should be opening tag and closing tag. And what is it? It was HTML and closing HTML. Now, as you can see, there are something has to be in between these two, right? Because when you open it, right open and closing, that's it. You're done. But there are something has to go in between this. So I'm gonna hit in between, and then I'm gonna give a many return. So as I hit the return key, it just gives a lot of the space over here, and this is the space that I am going to use to create two sections. First section is a head section, and second section is a body section. Okay, so I am going to go to the line number 3. Now, what is the first section name? Yes, head. Opening head, and I'm gonna hit the return. No, actually, I'm gonna close it right away. So many times my student, and then I am pretty sure you will do some, you forget about like closing this whole a lot. That is why as soon as I open this tag here, I just close it right away. By this way, it always exists as a pair, and you're never gonna forget about it. You're not forget about closing it. Once you close right away, our goal again is header section needs in between the head section, we need to put something in it. So that is why I position my cursor in the middle of it, hit the return key. So I give some space over here. So inside I create a head section. So this actually literally, no, I have to say this is head section, right? Let's do the same thing. Go to line 6, and what is the second section? Okay, so I will say body, and I'm gonna close the body right away. And the same deal, I'm gonna go to the in between, and I'm gonna hit the return key. So this is a structure, and we're done for the structure. You may wonder what this all like blank space will do. Like I said, this is never gonna contribute any visual element at all. But anyway, this is confusing, so I'm gonna say just return, delete everything, and like this. So for body, yeah, I will only leave one space because I can keep increasing the space in between body and body. So this is structure of HTML. So how to make a text as an HTML. Number one, have a structure. We are talking about, hold this thing, right? So this is the structure that your browser recognizes as your HTML document. And number two, save it. It means your document as a HTML document. So what do you mean by HTML document? HTML document has a specific extension. So for example, Microsoft Word, MS document, Word document. Whenever you create MS document, it'll have something called, say, let's say homework. For example, let's say I saved it as a homework dot doc. That is their extension. So what do you mean? What did I mean by save it as HTML? Meaning you have to save your document as something dot HTML. So this is very important. So many people, many times even they have a right structure over here. So like right structure here, this is done. But just because you fail to do this, this file you created never gonna be recognized as HTML by browser. So we are here because we just finished structure over here, as you can see over here. Now we are about to save it as HTML. So how do you do it? Let's go all together. So right now, as you can see, our document is just named as Untitled-1. Not only because this is not a good name, but also this file doesn't have any extension. In other words, there's no such a dot and something, something, something. It's missing over here. So once you're done, especially with a bracket, be careful because all the thing you did here is not saved yet. In other words, this whole document is still in the computer's memory. And right now, if you just turn your computer off, it's not gonna save. So you have to save it. So how do you save this as an HTML document? Go under the file over here. Right? And then like all other application, under the file, you have a save option here. So you can save or you can save as, but this is the first time, so you can just save. And then it's asking you a type as. So save as, it's just asking you what's the name of it, right? And before we do that, this one first, let's do it this one first. So most of the time, because we do the so much get used to Microsoft Word practice, what we do is my test. Okay. So I'm gonna have to say three things about how to name your HTML. One, no capital letter. I know capital letter is very useful, but as you can see over here, you're never gonna use capital letter. Here's why. Computer is so stupid. In other words, we think it's just stupid, but it's just so accurate. For computer or browser, my test.html and my test.html. Do you see these two? These two are identical for human being, but not for the computer. So in the second example, I put a capital letter M and capital letter T. This makes these two files as a different file. So that is, sometimes you feel like, yeah, exactly my test.html. Why it is not showing me the result I am expecting? It's because of your capital letter issues. So don't use any capital letter for this. Do you understand? All right. Now, number 2, no special character. I will also show you this very soon. But special characters like even space or exclamation mark or add $sign, this is not recommendable because this will cause so much trouble. Unless you really need it, don't use it. And especially some of the like symbols like a dollar is being used as part of the programming variable, not variable, like programming language. So it'll give you so much trouble. Okay, so no special letter, but you can use, for example, dash is okay. So you can say, I would say dash. For example, my dash test.html. This is okay. You can use a dash, or you can use a underscore. So underscore. For example, my underscore test.html. This is fine. And what's the third? No special letter. And no space. Yeah, I did it. Like no space. Okay, so do you remember this? I'm going to delete everything. So here, I'm going to name it as my test 1. And this is important. Most of people just like, yeah, I'm done, because I give my name here. But what's missing over here is you just give a name, file name, but computer need a dot and extension. And this is missing over here. So you have to say .html here. Otherwise, it's not going to recognize as HTML. So let's go to here. Don't finish over here. Make sure you put a .html. And then you're done. Okay. Next part is getting started is the specialized folder for this special program. So I don't want you to do it. I want you to save it somewhere like your desktop. So I will say, yeah, in my desktop, I will say create another folder for TCOM351. Okay, it's already taken. Great. Practice then. I don't know why I already created. If I already created, okay. So practice folder, and then I'm going to save it in my test1.html. Save. I'm done. Now, if I go to my folder, take up 351 practice folder here, and there is my HTML document. As you can see, Mac is seeing as HTML, not because of this extension, but also it can read a HTML structure in it. Now, like I said, this is a pure HTML document. How do you render this? We talked a lot last week that using a browser as rendering. So whenever, this is my practice for student, whenever you want to see what you did with the browser, I always said go to the file you created, and you can just drag it and drop on top of your browser. Boom. Yeah, this is how you render. Whenever you create any HTML document here, drag and drop on a browser. Okay. Now, why there is nothing? Anybody know why? Yes, because we created a blank shell. But nice thing about this is a browser recognizes it as HTML document, but it's nothing in it. But do you remember that how do you show the actual content? If you are using a browser of Chrome, go under the View, Developer, and View the Source. I want you to remember this because we do a whole lot of this. Under the View, Developer, and View Source, now you see all the code we created. This is what we created, right? Do you remember that? Okay, cool. Now, so far, we learned how to create. let me, excuse me. Let me wrap up a little bit here. So far, we used a bracket and use it as tool, and we save it as HTML document, and we render it as a browser. So we just learned how to do that with the browser. Okay, now let's go back to our you know what, let's do one more thing. I want you to remember, look at this, my test1.html exists as a file name there, right? Now I want you to go back, because this is the example that what's going to happen if you put a space in it, right? So I want you to go to the here and go under the file and save as this time. And this time, I want you to save this exactly same, a blank HTML, but my test2. But this is why I don't want you to use a space in your name. What did I say about like file name? No special character, no capital letter, and no space. So let's say I'm going to put a one space over here. Do you see there is a space over here? My space test2.html. But it's a very small, little tiny. It's really hard to recognize. But anyway, I put a space in here. I'm going to save it here. Cool. Now look at here. There is my test1.html, my space test2.html. What's going to happen if I render this to the browser? Of course, it's a browser. It has a structure, so it will recognize as HTML as well. So look at here. It's recognized. What's the problem? I want you to look at over here. What happened? And then you find out, what is this? %20 test2.html. See, I don't understand this part of this, because what I did was I put like my space, I would say space is like this way, test2.html. Whenever you put a like space in your file name, it's gonna be converted as a %20, as you can see over here. Something you didn't really respect. This is something to do with the ASCII code, and computer recognized space as a code, and your intention was a space over here, but they actually say space mean, yeah, %20. So that is why your file name is this messed up, even though your intention was my space test2.html. Actual code will be my %20 test2.html. So be careful. All right. Let's go back to our PowerPoint slide. So we'll do this a lot today. Now, let's put the actual content here, first of all. So what you are going to do is, we are going to put some our content like hello over here. So as you can see here, H1 is used. So let's use it for HTML, and let's go to our code. So let's open, I don't want to do it with test2.html. So I'm going to go to the open and test1.html. Cool. Now, when we talked about last week, we talked a whole lot about where is our canvas. This head section is for a definition and style and linking. So that is obviously for browser and computer. We don't have to pay attention to it. Like I said last week, this body and body is our canvas, which means this is the only section we can mess up around. So let's do this. Our intention is we want to say hello, but we don't want to say hello as a naked, as we just discussed about 20 minutes ago. So we just decided H1 and closing H1. And like I said, this H1 is a freestyle. So let's actually confirm with the example, hey, what kind of H1 style it has. So I'm gonna go to the end, line 7 over here. So I will say, type in. Now, as you type in, your program bracket is recognized it as HTML now. So it's actually sort of like recommending you what you can do with this. So there are a lot of things you can do, like address area, blah blah blah. Even you can, I think you can go down and then, but you can just say, because you know what it is, so H1, and as soon as you close it, now this is the benefit of using bracket. Look at this, it automatically closes it for you. So whenever you type in any valid opening tag, then bracket will help you to close it for you before you forget. So we opened it, and then here in between H1 and H1, what is our content? Why do we have H1 and closing H1? Yes, we have a content which is hello. Now, I want you to pay attention here because whole H1 hello is in between body and body, right? Okay, and then now let's render and see what is H1 style is. So let's say we'll change something, go under the save, and this is a saved one. So let's drag and drop and see what happened. Here we go. So my hello, this is H1 style. You don't know that much of you can see right now, but H1 style is bold, as you can see, and it is the biggest header. So this is the biggest size of a header. Right? Now, why we are here, because as you see our PowerPoint slide, what we want to see is this space works or not. So the first example we did here is we already confirmed that hello is over here. Now, we don't like the fact that there's no space in here. So my intention is just give it some space here and say hello from the edge of my left border. So for that, you thought, okay, let's give us some space. How do you do it? Go to the in between here and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 space in here. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 spaces in here, right? And let's save it. Like I said, whatever you do, it's not gonna save it yet. So we're gonna save it. How do you know it's saved or not? This guy. Okay, so let's save it. Now it's gone, right? The dot next to my name is gone, which means it's saved now. Now this is saved. Now what I drag and drop it, and what's gonna happen? I have to see the hello is separate from the edge over here, right? But it's not. As you can see, it's the same. So totally, this guy was ignored. How about vertical space? So let's say not only here, I'm gonna just give it a 1, 2, 3, 4. So what I wanted to do was, in our document, I want to separate this much of a space, so 10 space, and I want to separate from here. So I want to say hello here by this much of a vertical space, this much of a horizontal space. So there is a horizontal space over here, vertical space over here. Let's see how much it works. So I'm gonna go to this document, save, and boom, nothing. So this is what I mean by characteristic of HTML. Inside of the tag, any space or return doesn't really care. It's not recognized as a space. So remember this part. We'll go to it a little bit now. All right. So now I'm taking your deeper end. So what kind of tag can you use? I would say there is a P tag, which is the most popular, and this is for the paragraph. Okay, so as you can see, starting opening P tag, closing P tag, and then in between here, what do you put? Obviously, because we code it as a paragraph, so you may want to put a paragraph in it. This is a possible, say P, and say heading, head 1, and say, yeah, obviously as a content you are using as a heading, but you can use a paragraph tag. But I want you to remember this. This opening and closing, it has some pre-style attached to it. So in other words, whenever you use a P, it has a appropriate style of as a paragraph rather than header. Okay. One of the most common mistake people do is this, P1. Oh, this is so creative, but again, P tag only one has a P as a P. There is no such a number. Some people say P4 and then closing P4. This is so much creative mistake. There is no such a thing. Okay, paragraph only have one style. People do that because of this heading. So heading only exists from H1 to H6. In other words, heading 1 to heading 6. We already confirmed and tested out how heading 1 looks like. But heading 6 also has a very similar style. So for whenever you need a heading, you can use this like 6 style from H1 to H6. Now remember the same thing, H1 and closing H1 for titles. Now for H1 to H6, but there's no H7. Remember this. Okay. Now pre is very interesting tag. We call it a pre-formatted, which means PLE and closing PLE. And a minute ago, I said, if you say like, hello, space, 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 I, space, 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 M, this will be totally ignored. Am I right? Yes, it'll be ignored if you use a P tag or one of the H tag. But if you use a PLE tag, it will recognize. In other words, PLE tag is the one that actually make your HTML document or HTML editor as more likely Microsoft document. However, as much as it's a convenient, what I mean by convenient, it's something that we do, it does like we do with a Microsoft Word document. This is not really being utilized at most. And I'm going to be honest with you, the more you use the pre-tag, it looks like you are proving yourself as I'm so much beginner. But anyway, so let's see what happened. Go to the bracket here. I'm going to bring this down. All right. So here, I'm going to bring it here, say, anyway, this space is not recognized. I'm gonna go to the line 7 and then go to the line 8 here, because I still wanna put something here. But as I said in the very beginning, last week, don't try to put anything here. So H2. This is so much of a mistake. Why is that? Why this is so much of a mistake? Because you are out of your canvas now. This is your canvas, and then you are drawing something like outside of canvas, which means you are drawing something on the frame of your picture, kind of deal. So I will say, just try to copy this one, and I'm going to paste back here. So H2. And I will say, hello, what do I want to say? My, you can say, my first HTML document. Okay. And then you may say like, well, Michael, you said there is no space recognized, but the one space over here. Yes, one space, only one, will be recognized. So using a space 1 for a horizontal space will work, but vertically, any of a return does not recognize at all. All right, so what I am going to do is, why don't we use all like 5 tools? So say, let's do it H3, and then I'm gonna say H4. The thing is, this like bracket likes this idea of indent. By this way, you can recognize it so easily, because like I said, this is in the end, this whole thing is as recognized as a container. So H4, I will say H5, oh, no in between, and H6. Okay, and then you can say, go to the H3 one. This is H3 example. You can say this is H4 example. This is a H5 example. A H6 example. So let's do this. Okay, so I will go to the all the way here. I'm gonna change it to as capital T. That's fine. H1, H2 is like this way. As you can see, there is a dot, which means we didn't save it yet. So let's go to the save. Save. Now it just saved. Let's render. Here we go. So this is H1. I will say, okay, this one, right? So what do you see? As you can see from down, H1 to H6, it's just still black, bold style, but H1 is the biggest style, and H6 is the smallest. So you can pick and choose which one you want to use, like based on your structure of a document. Remember, H1 is the biggest, H6 is the smallest as a title. Now, we learned paragraph, so go to another here. So now we're gonna start with a P, so P and paragraph. So this is an example of my first paragraph. Okay, so this is my first paragraph, and again I will save it. and render it. Here we go. So obviously paragraph is not bold, but it is almost like example, almost the same size with H4. It's a bit like based on which browser you are using, but again, so paragraph is like this. And then I absolutely p tag is good for paragraph. And let's go to the pretext. So here I'm gonna go to another PLE. So say PLE tag. And here in PLE tag, a space works as, and look at this. So I gave whole a lot of space over here. This much of space and this much of space. And let's see, this will be recognized as a space because I use a special tag called the PLE. Here we go. So space was recognized. And as you can see, PLE tag has just some specific a style. It's a different font with a P tag. But anyway, so this is all the thing you can do with a P tag. And let's make a list. So what we want to do is we want to learn how to make a list like this one. So first and second. So in order to do so, we are going to use a ordered list. We call it the ordered list because there is an order. So ordered list start with the O and L. So we use OL. So like H1 tag, we have an opening OL tag and closing OL tag. And usually you put everything in content in between, but content itself also needs to be captured by this tag. So LI, which is a list item. So every single item should be opening LI and closing LI. So you remember like how to make a number item here? You learned that OL and LI. So let's do this. So I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna make this document a little bit smaller for you. All right, now in the end of a PLE, let's say I will say with H3 tag, I use H3 and my favorite colors. So I just said my favorite color over here as a title, and then in the end, I want to make a list. So say number 1 yellow, number 2 red, something like this. So how do you do number 1 and 2 and 3? This is called the OL, and of course, the bracket automatically closes it for you. So I'm gonna just open it a little bit space over here, and I'm gonna indent one more. So what is the thing that you have to use inside of OL for individual item? Yes, it's a LI. Opening LI and closing LI. So this is like a place where you have to put all this like order of your item. And of course, the thing that comes to first is from the number 1, and the next will be number 2. If there is no number 2, then it will only come with the number 1. So I will say I'm gonna give it 3. So say yellow, right? And then the nice thing about this whole thing is you don't have to type in everything. So I'm gonna just go to the next line, LI, and say red, and go to the next item, LI, close it, and say blue. And this space doesn't really matter, but I'm gonna just like delete the space. So I want you to look at this OL block, opening and closing ordered list, and then LI, 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 closing LI, LI, LI. So this is gonna be 1 and 2 and 3. So let's see how it works. I am going to go to like save it first, save, and boom, here. So number 1, number 2, number 3, like this. So as you can see, we are accumulating, creating something in HTML. This is our content, but we are still inside of body section because body is our canvas. All right, let's move on. Now, there is unordered list, exactly the same thing, which means it's a bullet point. It doesn't have a number. So that's why it's an unordered list. It uses a UL as an opening and then closing UL. And the same thing, LI is an item. So it's easy. So let's go to canvas, bracket one more time. This time, I am going to copy entire thing. So say, go to here and say another H3 and say my favorite car. Okay. And then I'm gonna go to the end of it and say, now bullet point, what is it? UL, because unordered list, right? And then I'm gonna give it some space, tab, and say, oh, each individual item will be called as what? LI, right? So LI, I will say FJ Cruiser, and then let's say LI item, let's say Mustang, and number 3 is LI item again. What's my favorite car? I don't know. BMW. I'm not really big fan of it, but anyway. So I said that, okay. So it's just still UL and UL block, and then we use LI for the bullet point. Let's see. Okay, go to the, I have to save it first, save, and render. Yes, now it says my favorite car, H3 style, and this 3 will be a bullet point over here. Okay. Now, let's move quickly because we have been so much. I'm gonna skip the definition list. Like when it comes to time, then we need this one. But definition list does this. So you have like come up with a definition and a list of all the things, but I'm gonna skip this one. Now, for the first time, spacing. This is the first tag that you don't need a pair. Do you remember that the first day I would say, whenever there is a tag that doesn't exist as a pair, I will tell you, I will let you know. This is the first example. In other words, there is no such a thing like a closing BR. No, BR just exists as it is. You don't have to close. Do you know why BR doesn't have it? Because like opening and closing in between, you put a content in it, but space doesn't have a content. That's why they come up with no closing tag. That totally makes sense. Now, so BR, even I don't know like why they call it a BR, but like this is a whole like I don't like about like engineer creating something. So and don't forget this and MBSB and even semicolon. So what is it? This is a code for horizontal space. In other words, in order to create one space, you have to type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 alphabetical like characters for one space. So let's try out this space. Okay. So vertical space first. In order to give a vertical space over here, so let's go back to my example over here. Let's say I feel like here, I'm looking at the browser over here. I want some space in between this yellow, red, and blue, right? So how do you do it? You can say yellow, and then after yellow, you can say a vertical space, which is what? BR. Okay? And the same goes to here. So BR. How about this? As you can see, there is a no closing BR, right? And save it. Look at this. There was a space created by BR over here. Okay. How about vertical? This is a vertical space. How about horizontal space? I will go up here on my example and say my paragraph over here. This is my paragraph, right? So basically what I'm saying is I am going to put a whole lot of space over here. Okay, so how do you do this? I have to go to like example of. So example of here, this is my space. So you locate your cursor over here. And do you remember the code? Starting with what? And NBSB and colon. So this code only create one space. What if you need another one? And NBSB semicolon 2. So like in order to create a 10 space, I will just say copy it. So go to edit and copy and go here. So how many more? Paste, paste, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 space. So as you can see, I put a 10 vertical, horizontal spaces in here. This is ridiculous. But anyway, now let's save it. Save. And look at this. This is 10 space created by this one. Okay. All right. So let's move on. All right. Now let's talk about HTML formatting now. So tags for formatting is that these are tags. And then so far we learned a tags of a P and H1 to H6 and the PLE tag. These are, I will call it as a container tag, which means it can contain a sort of a content from you. But all the tag you see over here, these are not container tag. These are for a formatting tag. So I want you to remember this in the very first week I said HTML. The whole idea is it's like content and style was separated, right? So content is delivered by this P tag or H1 tags or like UL or OL tag. I forgot this here. So OL, ordered list, unordered list. These are all the container tag. It can contain a content in it, but all these are a formatting tag. It's not holding a content, but it decorate a content. So as you can see, U underline, B as bold, strong as also kind of bold, I for the italic, okay, small for the small text, and insert a sub, all this, and then these are all the things we need for, right? So let's start with the underline. But before we use it, the most important thing is here. Formatting with the other tag is very important because look at this. This is my hello, which is my content. Okay, so you can start with, hey, let's say I want to use H1. So say H1 and say hello and H1. So this is when you, like we learned so far, because H1 is a container tag, and this container H1 tag is holding a H hello in it. Now, what if we don't like this basic style of H1, and what we want to do is giving an underline? What you have to do is, remember this container tag should be the outer container, which means like you will come up with a hello as a basic style of H1, but what if you want to add more? Then there is an order. So look at over here, this hierarchical. So it can be changed vice versa. You can do a emphasis first and then underline. It doesn't really matter, which means you can change the order too. Doesn't really matter. But as you can see, hello is H1 container. There are two styles in it. You want to do the emphasize and then you want to do underline. Order is not important, but make sure that when you open U, you have to close U first and then you go to the M. So as you can see, this hierarchy of like matching should be in there. One of the mistakes is you cannot do this. Hello, right? And then you start with a U, but then you just close it as EM here. This is problematic because this doesn't match. The same goes to, you can say EM here, but then you can just under U. That's gonna be so much trouble because it doesn't match. But regardless of what you do, you have to close it with a like container tag. In other words, anything like this, hello, and then say U, and then U, closing U. Doesn't really look like in the closing. Okay, doing again. Hello, and U, closing U. This is so much trouble. And this is one of the like things that you will see in my test. What's wrong with this? This content is embedded by formatting tag, but it is naked in terms of there is no container tag here, which means there is nothing is containing here because you cannot contain any content in it. Okay. So let's see in example here. So let's say what you want to do is my hello here, I want to make it as underline. So how do you do it? You go here. So you're still inside of this container tag here. Then you have to match up another one inside over here. So underline means U. So I'm going to go to here. So say opening U. As soon as I close, it's going to close it probably. As you can see, look at this. So it automatically do this, but it's not right because content is outside. So either you bring this guys into over here, or you have to move this guys over here. Either way, it's going to be the same. So I'm going to just move this content. No, I'm going to move the content here. So highlight. I'm going to cut it. And I'm going to put it inside. Now it matches. So container tag H1 and formatting tag U. And there is a content here. So let's see how it works. Let's save it and preview it. Look at this. Now my hello has a underline. Do you see that? Okay. So I want to show you some of the example of like how much things you can do. I opened a lot of like, I'm going to delete all this. tag. Okay, so I'm gonna open another tag. So what you can search for is, if you want to know how many like formatting tags are available, you can say HTML and formatting tag, and HTML text formatting. And if you scroll down, you can see this much of a thing is possible. So B for bold, strong for the important text. And you can just, like, if you scroll down, you can see what it does. For example, let's say B is strong, I and EM is different in a way. So element emphasized, EM. And the nice thing about this is if you click on it, you will see what emphasize does. Okay. All right. So formatting attribute. Some attribute of each tag can be used for formatting purposes. Like I said, U, underline, B for bold, it's only for the formatting purposes. Formatting code go inside of beginning tag. So formatting tag is going inside of beginning, which is a container tag. Right. Each formatting attributes are separate from the space, right? Separated by space. So this is what we did so far. All right. So this is what we did. Basically, let me summarize what we did today. One, we use text editor. So we use the bracket, for example, right? So with the bracket, we learned how to do edit. We learned how to save. And then we learned how to preview, or you call it as a render HTML. Number two, we learned two different types of tag, like container tag. And we learned a formatting tag. And lastly, we sort of learned how to make a HTML as a document. So that's it for today. If you have any question, email me